In this video, I'm going to describe and discuss the experience of psychedelic visual drifting from the perspective of the subjective affect index, and finish off with my personal theory about how your brain creates this visual distortion. This will be part of an ongoing mini-series in which I break down a wide variety of specific psychedelic-induced visual effects, in collaboration with Locovision, a world-class psychedelic replicator who created all of the visual replications for this video. Drifting is the experience of visual stimuli, such as objects and scenery, moving, warping, or shifting, as an effect of an altered state of consciousness. This effect gradually intensifies as a person focuses on a single point, but will reset to normality or reduce in intensity the moment a person refocuses their gaze. Within the subjective affect index, drifting is categorized as a type of visual distortion, meaning that it alters pre-existing visual stimuli without introducing any entirely new content, such as in the case of visual effects like psychedelic geometry and internal hallucinations. It is an extremely common experience that can occur at even the lowest level of psychedelic trips, and can increase in intensity and complexity, moving up the levels of the psychedelic experience. This effect can occur under the influence of almost any psychedelic compound, including but not limited to LSD, psilocybin, and mescaline. However, it can also occur to a lesser extent under the influence of MDMA, cannabis, meditation, and dissociatives such as ketamine, DXM, or 3-MeO-PCP. Subtypes. Drifting can vary depending on the nature and intensity of the altered state of consciousness, the patterns and textures of the viewed object or scene, and the individual visual processing of the person experiencing the effect. Various drifting subtypes have been identified by their characteristic patterns, directions, and styles of movement, though they may also combine together to provide otherworldly, beautiful, or dizzying visual experiences. The main subtypes of drifting are as follows. Breathing. Breathing is a style of visual drifting that results in objects and scenery appearing to contract inwards and expand outwards in a rhythm reminiscent of the lungs of a living organism. Melting. Melting is a style of visual drifting that causes the apparent texture of objects and scenery to progressively soften and liquefy. At lower intensities, this presents as an object's texture or shape beginning to subtly droop, wobble, and lose their structural integrity. At higher levels, the effect increases and affects a larger portion of the visual field, causing the lines, textures, and color between solid objects to fluidly melt into one another in a visual display that is impossible to ignore and creates a peculiar and intriguing experience of a familiar space. Blowing. Blowing is a style of visual drifting that seems to occur almost exclusively on textured surfaces, particularly on textures that are detailed and complex, such as wood grain or animal fur. This effect causes the textures to flow like a river in a seamless, looped animation. Twisting and spinning. Twisting and spinning is a style of visual drifting in which objects or textures appear to progressively twist or spin around as a person continues to focus on the same point. Turbulence. Turbulence is a style of visual drifting that is disorganized and unpredictable in its rhythm and direction. It results in objects and scenery appearing to chaotically shift and move in a manner that can be quite disorientating. Leveling system. Regardless of subtype, this effect is capable of manifesting itself across 4 different levels of intensity. Level 1. Subtle intensity. At the lowest level, visual drifting is primarily perceived as a slight wiggling that is most visible on high-contrast images that you directly focus on, such as text on a screen. At this level, drifting may not be noticeable at all when engaging in actions that do not require direct focus on individual points. Level 2. Mild intensity. Mild visual drifting is the first level at which the drifting is significant enough to take on a specific subtype or style, though not enough to distort most perceptions of your external environment. At this level, drifting becomes apparent as a defined movement on almost any surface you focus on, whether it's rocks or tree bark breathing or your cat's fur continuously flowing as you watch it. Level 3. Distinct intensity. At this level, visual drifting becomes powerful enough to generally change your general visual perception of your external environment. Some level of drifting can occur instantly instead of only developing gradually as you focus on a point, which can be especially noticeable when looking at faces which become distorted in appearance. If you do stare at a fixed point and keep your eyes relatively motionless, the effect can be powerful enough to render objects progressively unrecognizable from their original form. Level 4. All-encompassing. At the highest level of visual drifting, the intensity becomes powerful enough to distort not just specific objects, but every single point of your vision and the entirety of your external environment in an ever-changing and chaotic manner. The resulting effect is a bewildering confusion of visual information that never reaches a point of stability during the experience. Style variations. In addition to the subtypes, visual drifting can vary in its style of presentation. The differences between each style of drifting is broken down into the following variations: intricate versus simple, fast versus slow, smooth versus jittery. However, please note that the style of drifting doesn't seem to be directly related to the intensity level of the effect. For example, level 2 drifting can sometimes be more intricate than some instances of level 4. Now for my hypothesis on how our brain creates this effect. As far as I can tell, visual drifting seems to be the result of a sort of neurological feedback loop. Studies show that different parts of the brain become much more interconnected under the influence of psychedelics. I suspect that this increased interconnectivity creates a situation where sensory data signals stored within the visual cortex can bounce through the temporary new connections in the brain in a cyclical pattern back to their original source. Each time the original signal is reprocessed on top of itself, it degrades or distorts, but the brain still does its best to interpret the distorted signal as visual information. The resulting sensory inaccuracies continuously build up onto themselves through a system of recursive looping. This explains why visual drifting progressively increases when looking at a still image, but the distortions reset when you present your brain with a new image until your neurons have a chance to go back into the feedback loop. However, this is just a personal hypothesis based purely on observation and an admittedly rudimentary understanding of the brain, so if anyone here has any alternative suggestions, I would love to hear them in the comments below. Yeah, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this content and want to join my private Discord server or ask me any questions you may have about altered states of consciousness, consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also be sure to go check out Loca's channel for more amazing psychedelic replications, and check out my 7 levels of the psychedelic experience video for a more general overview of what it's like to trip.